Good morning, friends. Stephen Bernard with Israeli News Live. It is March the 1st, 2025, and February ended with an explosive debate between President Vladimir Zelensky and that of President Trump over this peace agreement with Russia. And even Vice President Vance weighed in on this. Really, I was shocked at watching this, but at the same time, I realized the world is just a theater to begin with, as they call war as a theater of war. But what really troubled me even deeper as I watched this exchange, at one point you really couldn't help but to want to have respect for Zelensky for the first time ever, seeing his courage to stand up against the President and Vice President of the United States. Some say he disrespected the Oval Office. I was quite impressed with his stance that he did. But then again, I remembered what's really at stake. I remembered the people that are dying. Those, like even in the case of Gaza, the Palestinians that died at the hands of those world leaders that decide the fate of their land afterwards. And I remembered the words of Eduardo Hodos, who said, clearly brought forth the not the prophecy, but the intention of the former head of Chabad, the late Rebbe Menachem Schneerson, in his words. We're going to go into that today. But most of all, I could not help but think of the echoing words of what the prophet Jeremiah said in chapter 6, when he accused both the prophet and the priest, and everyone was greedy for gain. And that they say peace and peace as they hurt the daughter of his people, and there is no peace. Well, oddly enough, you're going to see all three of the world leaders, Trump, Putin, and Zelensky, are all very connected to the Chabad organization. So is he really a man of courage? Or is he just a puppet in the game and not quite as knowledgeable about the behind-the-scene plans, or is he? Was this really just a, as they say, theater of war, and we are only being the participants watching this theater as a cyclical prophecy plays out in our midst? All right, let's play a clip here. Let me find the right places that I want to play for you. And by the way, before I do the heated debate there, maybe what we should look at is when Rubio talks about they're defending freedom of speech. Let me find that right spot there. Because I think the defense for freedom of speech here cannot be underscored in this, because some issue with Britain, but they're talking about they're going to defend the freedom of speech both online and, yeah, I doubt they ever will, but let's listen in anyway.
American citizens vigorously if we have to. I do think that under the president's leadership, we're going to find common ground with our friends in the UK on this question, but it remains to be seen. The principle that will guide us is we believe in free speech in this country, and we'll fight for it for American citizens.
Mr. President, on the deal, is there any other oil and gas component to the deal? Is it all critical?
A little bit. We'll see.
On LNG?
But we're not really looking for that so much. We got a lot. We have more than anybody in the world, by far.
Very compelling one that what unites us with Europe as much as anything else is these shared values, and one of them being free speech. And so if Americans are threatened by it, we're going to need to take action in that regard.
Mr. President.
It's actually a very important question.
We spoke about this in detail with the Prime Minister, the Foreign Secretary, and others at lunch yesterday. And I know that Secretary of Commerce Lutnick followed up in private meetings last night. This is really important. We believe Americans have the right to speak their mind, even if we in this room disagree with them. They have the right to speak their mind in the public square, which is often online these days. And we're going to defend that right as it pertains to American companies and American citizens vigorously if we have to. I do think that under the president.
Now, I just wanted to play that mainly because we're exercising our right of freedom of speech in this particular broadcast as well. Let's get into this heated debate, though. And there's several different places, several different key points that Zelensky makes. And before I play this, I want to say, though, Zelensky throughout this had talked about there had been multiple times of dialogue, peace agreements, and he claims that Russia violated them every time. Of course, Russia says that Ukraine violates these ceasefires. So it is back and forth, but I have a feeling that we're all being played no matter what. Let's listen into what he says here.
You want me to be tough? I could be tougher than any human being you've ever seen. I'd be so tough. But you're never going to get a deal that way, so that's the way it goes. All right, one more question.
Hey, I want to respond to this. So look, for 4 years in the United States of America, we had a president who stood up at press conferences and talked tough about Vladimir Putin, and then Putin invaded Ukraine and destroyed a significant chunk of the country. The path to peace and the path to prosperity is maybe engaging in diplomacy. We tried the pathway of Joe Biden of thumping our chest and pretending that the President of the United States' words mattered more than the President of the United States' actions. What makes America a good country is America engaging in diplomacy. That's what President Trump is doing.
Can I ask you?
Sure.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So he occupied our parts, big parts of Ukraine, part of East and Crimea. So he occupied it on 2014. So during a lot of years, so I'm not speaking about just Biden, but those time was Obama, then President Obama, then President Trump, then President Biden, now President Trump, and God bless, now President Trump will stop him. But during 2014, nobody stopped him. He just occupied and took. He killed people. You know what the contact line?
2015.
2014.
2014 and 2014.
2014.
Yeah. So
I was not here.
Yeah, but
That's exactly
but-
right.
Yes, but during 2014 till 2022, yeah, the situation the same. The people have been dying on the contact line. Nobody stopped him. You know that we had conversations with him, a lot of conversations, my bilateral conversation, and we signed with him, me, like a new president. In 2019, I signed with him the deal. I signed with him, Macron and Merkel, we signed ceasefire. Ceasefire. All of them told me that he will never go. We signed with him with gas contract. Gas contract. Yes, but after that, he broken this ceasefire. He killed our people and he didn't exchange prisoners. We signed the exchange of prisoners, but he didn't do it. What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Mr.
are
President,
not
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should.
Let me just stop there for a moment. J.D. Vance saying they're forcing conscripts to the front line because they have manpower problems. Most people thought we were nuts for saying that. We surely brought that out. We have people inside of Ukraine that we know personally that first shared that information with us. We clearly showed that happening over and over again. J.D. Vance brings it up. And then J.D. Vance is kind of angry at Zelensky for bringing this up in the public when the public media is present. Well, you can't blame the guy because let's face it, unless the media gets involved sometimes, which the media tends to spin things, which you can't really spin when you have the right to speak freedom of speech. And that's kind of hypocritical in a way too. J.D. Vance talks about they're going to defend the right for freedom of speech and then says to Zelensky, you have no right to come here and say that. Let's continue.
Should be thanking the president for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to.
And count once.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems? bringing people into your military?
We have problems.
And do you think that it's
I will
respectful
answer.
to come to the Oval Office
I
of
will
the United
answer.
States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your
A
country?
lot of
Now, he's not attacking. He's actually stating facts. And if you'll notice, he says from 2014 to 2022, our people were dying on the front lines, as well as Russians. Okay, so for me, I feel more neutral in this respect here. But the mere fact is, Trump was a president for 4 years, and he's making the point, you did nothing then. So his point is, and he's got a valid point, what makes you think that your peace agreement now is going to do any good? You didn't stop anything when you were here 4 years before Biden got into office. He's just really showing you haven't done anything. You just talk words, and he's concerned. But again, I remind you, they're all guilty for gain, as Jeremiah the prophet has said. And we're going to get into that in just a moment. Let's continue, though.
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems. Even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless.
You don't
God
know that.
bless. You
Don't-
will not
you
have
gotta-
a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because
I'm
you're in no
answering on
position
this
to
question.
dictate that.
That's exactly
Remember
what
this.
you're doing.
I'm not
You're in
dictating.
no position to dictate what we're going to feel.
You
We're
will-
going to feel very
you will
good.
feel influenced.
We're going to feel
I'm-
very
I'm
good and
telling
very.
Now, granted, what he's going to get to when he finally gets to this is that if he doesn't get Russia stopped with Ukraine, Russia will take Poland. He'll go back to Russia, who used to be the USSR, etc. But again, keep in mind, as you listen to all of this, it's all a theater, and they are intentionally doing things. He may even be prophesying, not that he's a prophet, but in other words, with the knowledge that he knows, that they're planning on bringing this country down. Now, they take a big offense because he makes the comment, yeah, you got a big ocean that separates you. He's really trying to make the point, if you don't help me, it will come to your doorsteps eventually. That's really his main point. And again, I admire his courage. They don't like it very well, but is it really just a charade for us? Let's listen, though.
Very
You
strong.
will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed
From the
yourself
very-
to be in a
from
very
the
bad
very
position,
beginning
and he
of the
happens
war.
to be right about
From the
it.
very beginning of the war.
You're not
Mr.
in a good
Brown,
position.
I
You
was
don't have
in
the
it.
cards right now. With us, you start having
Not playing
cards. But
cards.
right now, you
I'm
don't.
very
You're playing
serious,
cards.
Mr. President.
You're
I'm
playing
very
cards.
serious.
You're
I'm
gambling
the
with the
president
lives
in
of
war.
millions of people.
You think-
You're gambling with World War
What do you-
III.
what do you
You're
think about?
gambling with
What do you
World
think
War
about?
III. And
You-
what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country.
I'm
That's
with
back
all
to you.
respect to your
Far
country.
more than a lot of people said
very
they
respect.
should have.
Have you said thank you once this
A lot
entire
of
meeting?
times.
No, in this
Even
entire meeting,
today.
have you said thank
Even
you?
today.
You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States
are
of
you
America
speaking about?
and the president who's trying to save your country.
Please, you think that if you will speak very loudly about the war, you
He's
can...
not speaking loudly. He's not
Yeah.
speaking loudly. Your country's
Can I-
in big
can I-
trouble.
Can I
Again, he doesn't mean loudly like in being loud in the room. I get immediately what he's talking about. In other words, you feel like that if America says it, then Putin's going to listen. That's what he means by you're speaking loudly. Trump totally misunderstood what he was talking about when he said it, and it creates another debate. Let's continue.
Wait a minute. No.
Can
You've
I
done a lot
answer?
of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not
I
winning.
know.
You're not winning this.
I
You have a damn
We-
good chance of
we are
coming out
staying,
okay because of
Mr.
us.
President, We are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
You haven't
in
been
this
alone.
cabinet,
You
and
haven't
not
been
only
alone.
in this cabinet.
We gave you, through
I
this
said
stupid president, $350 billion.
You voted
we gave
for
you
your
military
president.
equipment,
You
and you
voted
men
for
are
your
brave,
president.
but they had to use our military.
What about
if,
West?
if you didn't have
You
our
invited
military
me-
equipment,
you invited
if
me
you
to
didn't
speak.
have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3
okay?
days, I heard it from Putin. In 3 days, this is something
Maybe
new.
less.
In 2 weeks, of course, yes.
It's going to be a very hard thing to do business like this. I
Again,
tell you.
just say thank you.
I said a lot of times thank you to American people.
Accept that there are disagreements, and let's go litigate those disagreements rather than trying to fight it out in the American media when you're wrong. We
You know, Mr. Vance is wrong in this case here, Vice President Vance, because quite frankly, the American people really don't know when you try to control what people say. You want to get in the back room privately and have your little talks and never tell the American public anything. We know that all too well ourselves. What goes on behind the doors, even they try to cover that up. Destroy documents, won't release documents. Yeah. Trying to hide their intentional cover-ups of the case that we deal with. It's no different than this. I still, though, can't help but wonder. And maybe because when I do look at Zelensky and look at his Chabad connection, I can't really get beyond 2023. Putin and Trump, decades. So the ones really controlling this is not Zelensky. Yes, he was put in there as a puppet power. But I think what it is, maybe he does relate a little bit more to the death of his people. And he's got a lot of pressure on him. Let's continue.
know that you're wrong.
But you see, I think it's good for the American people to see what's going on.
I understand, sir.
I think it's
I
very
understand.
important. That's why I kept this going so long. You have to be thankful. You don't have the
I'm
cards.
thankful.
You're buried there. Your people are dying.
tell you
You're
again,
running
I
low
know.
on soldiers.
Don't-
Listen,
don't please,
you're running
Mr.
low
President.
on soldiers. It would be a damn good thing.
Mr.
And then
President.
then you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go and I want this. Look, if you could get a ceasefire right now, I tell you, you take it so the bullets stop flying and your men.
He looks at Trump like he's lying out his teeth, which he is because he's already said he's tried to sign a ceasefire. If you guys remember, we did a broadcast on this a little while back. There was this exchange here that happened, the peace agreement with former Prime Minister of Israel, Naftali Bennett, and that of the Russian President, Vladimir Putin. And there's two different accounts, and I think maybe both of those are accurate. In one, the Business Insider says the U.S. blocked the Ukraine peace agreement that they had negotiated. And in this one here, the Common Dream says that Boris Johnson pressured Zelensky to ditch the peace talks with Russia. So now, still though, the whole point that Zelensky is making is that Trump was the president for 4 years during all these battles going on, and he didn't do anything then. In fact, if anything, he only supplies him with a bunch of weapons to go and fight. There's no talk of the peace deal or the deal of the century, etc. It's only now that he's coming back the second time that he's trying to broker the ceasefire. In fact, we even have Naftali Bennett in this interview here with NBC News, where he talks about that Putin wanted to kill Zelensky, and he has to try to get him to agree not to do so. So let me play that for you here.
מכל מקום זה היה ויתור אחד בפגישה
Turn the volume down just a
המשרד
touch
שלו
here.
עשה
2 hours later, Zelensky went to his office.
באיזשהו שלב
3 or 4 hours in the meeting. I'm getting to the meeting now.
בפגישה, אני
I
אומר לו,
asked, what's
"שמע,
with,
מה עם הסיפור הזה? אתה לא... אתה
are you going to
מתכוון
kill
להרוג אותו?"
Zelensky? He said, I won't kill Zelensky.
אז אמרתי לו,
Then I said,
"אני
I
צריך
have to
להבין
understand that
שאתה
you're
תגיד
giving
מילה
your
שאתה
word
הורג
that
את
you won't kill
זלנסקי,
Zelensky.
או אני לא הורג
I
את
won't kill Zelensky.
התקשר לזלנסקי
I
ישירות,
call
ואמר לו,
Zelensky and
"תשמע,
say,
יצאתי
I came out of the meeting. He's not going to kill you.
הוא אומר לי,
Yes, are you
"אתה
sure?"
בטוח?" אמרתי,
100%, he won't kill you.
מכל מקום...
So you see, this was part of what was going on then, and this is why Zelensky doesn't trust anybody. But now we have new breaking news, and that is the ceasefire deal that Trump supposedly was going to negotiate is put on hold. We're going to get into the biblical aspects of this here in just a moment. Let's listen in.
Breaking news. It appears talks between the U.S. and Ukraine have broken down after a tense and combative day at the White House, and a planned news conference for this afternoon has just been canceled, we've learned. A short time ago, President Trump posting on social media saying, in part, I have determined that President Zelensky is not ready for peace if America is involved. And he goes on to write, he disrespected the United States of America and its cherished Oval Office. He can come back when he is ready for peace. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky left the White House after meetings with President Trump in an attempt to persuade the administration to continue backing Ukraine's ongoing war with Russia. But in the Oval Office earlier, Zelensky clashed with Mr. Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance. It was an astonishingly hostile exchange, the pair yelling at him about his, quote, attitude and whether or not he was grateful for U.S. support. Here's some of what truly happened.
The laptop from hell was... You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. Right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
You know, this is just really ridiculous how this has turned out to be. But, you know, as I look at this, I cannot help but think the first thing that comes to my mind, we often think of that scripture in Jeremiah. I think in the King James Version, it's verse 15. But it says, peace, peace, when there is no peace. They saying, peace, peace, and there is no peace. But when you really look at what the scripture says, and of course we know this is dealing with the times from back in the Babylonian days, but I can't help but look at this from a cyclical perspective. For from the least of them, even to the greatest of them, everyone is greedy for gain. And the least of them being Zelensky, and certainly he's been very much a part of taking those weapons coming in, selling them on the black market, making money, making his own greedy gain, right? And from the prophet, even unto the priest. By the way, the least and the greatest being Putin and Trump in this case here, or Biden or Obama or any of the others. They were all greedy for gain, and they were. We see Biden and his son, they're all into the oil deals of Ukraine. We see that Trump, I've pulled up his involvement in Ukraine businesses there, even owning he actually owned a business there. I forget the name of it. It was a telecommunications company that he bought there. But they're all greedy for the gain. Putin as well. Okay, now even the prophet unto the priest. The false prophets of America, you know, like those all backing Trump right now, the priests being the Chabad rabbis, everyone dealeth falsely. They have healed also the hurt of my people, saying, peace, peace, when there is no peace. Now, oddly enough, if you look at this one here, they say they have healed the hurt of my people, okay, me, but if you go over, I think it's just 2 chapters more to chapter 8. All right, let's go to chapter 8. Let's see here. I don't know if I have it highlighted or not. So yeah, here we go right here. And this one here, this seems to apply as a future prophecy. Could be what we're dealing with now. Because in this one, it literally says, Bat Ami, the daughter of my people. That's another generation. So we read there in verse 10, therefore will I give their wives unto others, and their fields to them that shall possess them. From the least even unto the greatest, every one is greedy for gain. From the prophet even to the priest, every one dealeth falsely. And they have healed the hurt of the daughter of my people, lightly saying, peace, peace, when there is no peace. I think Jeremiah prophesied of the events that were going to happen then, as well as the events that we're seeing in this day, because Batami, and not just Ami is my people, Batami is a future generation. Now, let's take a look at this from a different perspective. Now you see the greatest of them. Look at Trump, how young he is there, and yet still very connected to the Chabad organization. Vladimir Putin with the head rabbi of the Chabad organization. By the way, the guy there is an American. Okay, then you have Trump right here before he became president. He's there at the grave of Menachem Schneerson, honoring Menachem Schneerson. Okay, you have Putin here, again, with the head rabbi there of Russia. And Zelensky, that's Trump there in Israel. And of course, you have his son-in-law and his daughter there as well, who is a Chabad rabbi. Zelensky doesn't meet with Chabad Jews until 2023. Now, he does come from a Jewish family, but he's very secular. He's not Orthodox. But he meets with them. He becomes the puppet in the game. He is the least, but he is also greedy for gain. But I think his statements in the Oval Office, though, are a little bit more sincere. He may have made his millions, but now he's under the pressure of his people that he's got to do something, and he's got to do it quick. But don't forget, Eduardo Hodos, The Jewish Syndrome, the sensational series book entitled The Jewish Syndrome, authored by Eduardo Hodos, himself a Jew. He is head of the Reformer Jewish community in Kharkov, Ukraine. From 1999 to 2002, by the way, he was the mayor of that city there. You see him at a younger age here in 1991 when he met with Chabad Rabbi Schneerson. He didn't meet with him once, he met with him twice. Okay? And then, though, later in his early 70s, he looks like a young man, but it says his early 70s there, he realized that his whole Jewish organization was corrupt. He converted, after being a rabbi for decades, converted to Christianity, to the Russian Orthodox faith, and become a Christian, as you can see him seated here. So big change in his life there. But in this document here, he reveals what Schneerson said publicly. Okay? He brings it out. He puts out his 1994 speech, what was in the newspaper of Slayanin. Chabad leader Messiah Menachem Schneerson outlined his plans for destroying both Ukraine and Russia. Now don't forget, it's Eduardo Hodos that revealed to us that Putin was the cousin of another, I think is a governor in Ukraine, one of the cities of Ukraine there, or maybe another mayor, something like that, but I think it was a governor, Rabinovich, that Putin was his cousin. But it says, Slavs among them, Russians, this is Schneerson, the guy right here, are most unbending people in the world. Slavs are unbending as a result of their psychological and intellectual abilities created by many generations of ancestors. It is impossible to alter these genes. Slav Russian can be destroyed but never conquered. That is why this seed is subject to liquidation. And at first, a sharp reduction in their numbers. First of all, we will divide the Slavic nations of 300 million, half of them Russians, into small countries with weak and severed connections. For this, we will use our old method, divide and conquer. We will try to pit these countries against each other, suck them into civil wars for the sake of mutual destruction. The Ukrainians would think that they are fighting against the expansionist Russia and struggling for their independence. Exactly what Vladimir Zelensky thinks. They will think that they have finally gained their freedom while they become fully subdued by the same, will be thought by the Russians as though they defended their national interest to return their lands illegally taken away from them, and so on. Looking back in history, it must be admitted that these lands are the ancient ancestral lands of the Jewish Khazaria. That it is Israel's captured by Kiev's Rus, the ancient state of Russia, with the capital of Kiev in the 10th century. The Slavs are temporary guests on these lands and are subject to eviction. We will return this territory and build the great Khazaria, the Jewish state, on these fertile lands in the same way as 50 years ago, we created Israel, squeezing the Palestinians out. That was what Schneerson said. This is why you're seeing this huge battle over Ukraine right now. This is why Israel was involved in negotiating that peace. And this is why now Trump has backed out of the peace agreement. No doubt he will allow Russia to continue to destroy more. Because Putin knows his part that he's playing. He is, after all, very much controlled by the Chabad organization. So don't kid yourself. And Zelensky, he's controlled by them as well, but maybe not as long-term as what we see with Trump and Putin. I'm Stephen Ben-Nun. You're watching Israeli News Live, where you will hear the truth.